community leaders, and more.
So join us Thursdays at 9 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and every afternoon at 5:06 p.m. on KSJE.
Hello everyone, my name is Mick Hess, your host for Roving with the Arts here on KSJE 90.9. Please join me every weekday starting at 9 a.m. for the chance to hear full-length, unabridged opera, ballet, symphonic, and chamber music. I'll share news of local concert events that you may be interested in attending, background information about some of the greatest musical compositions ever written. Tune in weekdays 9 to 10 a.m. and Wednesday from 9 to 10:30.
KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them. Whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury, San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Ten minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday morning, February the 24th, 2021. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Michlin, and thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the air in San Juan County, 103.3 FM if you're listening this morning in Durango, Colorado, or you can listen anywhere on Earth from our website, ksje.com. Welcome also to our viewers who are watching our visual radio program. It is streaming live this morning to the KSJE Facebook page, our KSJE Twitter account, and our KSJE channel on YouTube. We are glad that you are with us, however you got here this morning. So welcome aboard, everybody. Coming up in the next few moments, an update from Farmington Schools with Superintendent Dr. Eugene Schmidt. He is standing by to give us an update on what's been going on in the Farmington School District and what they are planning for in the next weeks and months from now. So stay tuned for an update in the next few moments right here on KSJE. And then later on this hour at 8:50 a.m., we will take our weekly trip to the Encouragement Lab. Dr. Mike Hadabaugh will be joining me here. And this week, his message is how ignorance is still bliss. And he'll explain more about what that means coming up in the next few moments here at 8:50 a.m. on KSJE. Next hour, Mick Hess will take us roving with the arts. And this morning, Mick is playing music from the great Yo-Yo Ma and from the album Silk Road Journeys. You'll hear some of that music coming up this morning on Roving with the Arts with Mick Hess, a special 90-minute episode on Wednesdays, of course, every week, because that takes us to 10:30 and right on Four Corners, our local and regional author program. This week, Tracy Hales-Vass is speaking with author Larry Killam about his latest book called Destiny Strikes Twice. The story about aviator and inventor James L. Brees. You'll hear more about that coming up today at 10:30, right on Four Corners on KSJE. And don't forget, of course, in addition to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can check us out on Instagram as well at KSJE 90.9 FM. And let's talk about the weather forecast, shall we? Outside right now, sunshine, 29 degrees in Farmington, winds about 8 miles per hour, so it feels like 22 degrees. We are expecting a day of increasing sunshine today after some of the clouds burn off. The high today, 54, still mild, 26 and partly cloudy overnight tonight. And then tomorrow, scattered showers, maybe a possible chance of a shower, I would say, tomorrow with a high of 48 degrees. Clearing up, though, with a low of 23 Thursday night. On Friday, sunny but cooler. The high 48 Friday, 51 and sunshine on Saturday before the next possible storm system rolls in on Sunday with a chance of rain showers and a high of 48. Maybe some rain or snow showers on Monday with a high of 51. And then mostly sunny skies return for the rest of next week with temperatures nearing 60 degrees. And we always tell you that visual radio can take you places. And we are monitoring this week and celebrating this week the groundbreaking last Friday of the new student housing project here at San Juan College. Here's a look at the construction site literally across the street from our camera that is always watching the skies above San Juan College and Farmington. But the work work is underway to create the land for this construction project to build the new student housing here at San Juan College. It is located just north of the HHPC, so we are looking south, and you can kind of see the HHPC building right there on the right-hand side, and the main campus would be off to the left. The health science building there also on the left-hand side of the screen, and anyway, the groundwork is being done. They're moving a lot of dirt over there these days to get things ready for the next stage of construction. Well, let me turn to my guest, who is patiently waiting for me to introduce him this morning. Farmington Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Eugene Schmidt, is joining me this morning. It's always a pleasure. Dr. Schmidt, good morning.
Good morning, Scott. And just what a great day it is. I feel like I want to rename the show the Farmington Municipal Schools Good News Hour.
Well, it's exciting when you can share some good news with us, and we're excited to hear some of it. And I know you and your staff are working hard to kind of make things into good news, because it's been a challenging year for your staff and your students and you personally.
Yes, I would say that good news happens for those that wait, and for those many families and student staff who've been patiently waiting to return to learn in person, this is the now. And so, Scott, if I can take just a moment of indulgence in the good news, I want to celebrate just a couple of staff members
You bet.
who were recognized in the board agenda last night.
You bet. Please do.
And just kind of set the stage for the good news. So shouts out to 3 staff members in particular: Melissa Sowers, who is the drama teacher from Piedra Vista High School, to Ashley Williford, who is the drama teacher at Farmington High School. These 2 amazing leaders took a virtual busload of kids down to the State Drama Festival, and it'll be coming out probably on the school's website, but just the number of individual 1, 2, 3 placings, the fact that the drama team from Piedra Vista in what they call the Athens division was the state champion. We had a couple of state champions in things like, design, costumes, solos, improv, just a wonderful story to have in a virtual world, the success of some of our drama teachers from our high schools. And the third person I wanted to give a special shout out is really a legend in Farmington, and that's Coach Pat McGrath, who was named and honored for his 7th state coach of the year for girls tennis. And so it's just a nice story that keeps unfolding, whether you're involved in drama or academics or sports. Good things happen to Farmington people and their students. And so congratulations for that. And so then I'll jump back on topic now to really get to other bits of good news.
Well, nice to see and hear that recognition, of course, for your staff, and it just kind of trickles down to your students too, I would imagine, and great leadership there for your students to learn from these great teachers and coaches. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the students is when you place that high in state, you qualify for internationals, and I don't yet know what that means, but in a virtual world, it's got to be exciting.
Well, that's true. Very, very exciting indeed. And so we're talking today, in addition to the kudos for your staff, some of the other topics we've got is the shifting to in-person learning, as you mentioned, for the other grades now who have not been in the classroom now for almost 12 months. Grades 6 through 12, some of the state legislation that is being talked about in Santa Fe. We'll talk a bit about that, and the budget, and some federal help, and then graduation. So lots of things to talk with you about this morning, Dr. Schmidt. I guess let's start about the return for some of your 6 through 12 students. As I mentioned, they hadn't seen the inside of a classroom in almost 12 months.
Yes, it is amazing. One of those March 13th of 2020 is indelibly marked in everybody's mind and remembrance that we are now almost a year later, as you say, back in the classroom. And students and families do have choices. We continue to offer at-home learning and will through the rest of the year. And we're also looking now at in-person. It's a hybrid. For those families involved, know that students go to school now in pre-K through 12 in an A-B model where they go maybe a Tuesday, Wednesday, and then a different group goes on a Thursday, Friday. Some combination schools have maybe a Monday, or actually a Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday. So different kinds of hybrids. But the important thing is almost 5,000 students who have chosen in-person learning are now back in school in what we would call a 50-50 model. 50% of the enrollment or building occupancy or staff rostering. So we're really excited that kids have made the venture back into the school, and the first couple of weeks for the middle school and high school have gone very well. Teachers are excited. I know that kids are happy. And what I think our community would be interested in not only is that academic return, but with students coming back to in-person learning, it opens up the door for middle school and high school team sports. And so team sports are now underway. It will be announced soon as to when we play our first high school football game, but sports are coming back. Academics are back. It's just a good news time.
Very good. Well, and you're right, Dr. Schmidt. I know a lot of students and parents and others have been waiting, trying to wait patiently, maybe some better than others, for that news to come out. So that's great. The practices, I think, are already underway, right, for some of school sports?
Yes, yeah, we're already opened up the sports complexes to what we will call a very short fall season.
Yes.
And perhaps next month I'll invite our athletic director, Frank Whalen, to join us, and he can talk more about how in this new sports design, they've gone back to a traditional Northwest Corner League. And so we'll be competing in at least fall competitions more with Aztec, Bloomfield Central, the schools out of Gallup. So it's more of that old traditional Northwest feel as opposed to putting kids on that 3-hour bus ride down to Albuquerque.
Right, true. Or further to the southwest corner of the state, perhaps.
Or even further, yes.
I suppose that's very true. And just this programming note for our listeners and viewers this morning, tomorrow at 9 a.m. on our COVID-19 program, one of our guests tomorrow is going to be Sally Marquez, who's executive director of the NMAA, the New Mexico Activities Association. So we hope to get an update from her. As long as we're talking about sports, Dr. Schmidt, I thought I would pass that along to our listeners as well.
I'll be tuning in for that one.
Okay, very good.
I'll be tuning in.
Excellent. Well, that's great. And so let's talk about some of the other things that are going on, which would be legislation in Santa Fe. As we know, the state is nearing the almost end of its 60-day session. It will wrap up, I believe, mid-March. And so there's a lot of bills that are going through the roundhouse these days, and the budget bill, of course. And so there are a number of these that you are watching carefully. And what would that mean to Farmington schools? Do we have any word yet of what's moving forward and what's not moving?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because as you described, we're just rolling past that halfway mark of the 60-day session that will end on the 20th of March. And so we begin to get a feel of what and where the legislation is going. And, in that abundance of good news, the revenue projections for New Mexico continue to get better. The economy, I'll call it the COVID economy, is beginning to recover. We can talk a little bit about red, yellow, green county colors, but I'm optimistic that San Juan County, I'm hopeful today we can talk about that, but going from red to yellow to green, and with every color change, more businesses will be open in an expanded fashion. I'm optimistic and hopeful that things in Four Corners, as across all of Mexico, will get that economic rebound that everybody's been waiting for. But in the meantime, that presents a more positive picture at the state legislature in terms of funding for schools. And so schools are funded by what we call House Bill 2, and it looks like there's going to be anywhere from a 4% to a 4, maybe plus percent increased infusion in funding for schools. And so what does that mean? That means that a number of bills we're going to be watching will be important. One of those is House Bill 83 that changes the number of graduation credits from 24 to 23. So if passed and signed by the governor, it's already passed through committee, House Bill 83, but if it passes the House, Senate, Governor signs, that will look to change graduation rates again in 22-23, that incoming freshman class. But there's some curiosities in the bill that I think are important to students, because it allows students to develop more of their own career path choice, specifically in the areas of what does core English and math look like. In this case, if this bill is passed, it will allow students to earn graduation credits in core classes through career and technical education courses that traditionally you could take a welding. Well, what would it look like if you could take a welding math, or a business financial math, or an English construction trades math? So there's an interesting change in the thinking by the legislature, certainly supported by public education, and I'm interested in this as well because it gives kids choice as to how they view their high school time. And what we know, Scott, is there's always a concern for kids that don't see the relevance or the purpose of high school. So if in their career path choices of classes they take, they can migrate to things more relevant or rigorous to them. The APs and those advanced places are still there, but it gives kids choice, and I'm hopeful that by choice, more kids will stay in school, again, seeing the purpose and relevance, and in the end of the day, that's what we want, is to be able to send our graduates out prepared for what their next choice in life will be. So it will be interesting, and we're watching that one closely. There's a couple of others, and I won't talk a lot about them, but one that interests me is House Bill 126 that would introduce a mandated computer science class. You don't have to mandate it in terms of a graduation requirement, but there would be an expectation that every high school offers a computer science course, and Farmington schools do. And so we're a little bit ahead of the curve on that one, but computer science, you look at cybersecurity, information processing, robotics, it's a computer world that we're moving towards migrating. And so it is important that, our kids have some exposure to coding or the technology infrastructures, repair and replace, as well as just the career exposure to the different career and technical computer science fields in the future. So that's a curiosity to us. And then very quickly, two others, and we'll skip on to other kinds of things, but House Bill 184 is one thing we're tracking as well, and that's K-5 extended school year or days. There's two different philosophies that the legislature are looking at. One is optional, to extend the school year by 25 days for K through 5, and the other might be a mandated K-8. Everybody does 10 extra days. The motivation and thinking behind this, Scott, is that everybody is concerned and uncertain about what lost learning looks like over this last year that you mentioned at the beginning of the show. So we're watching this at legislature to see, will this be something that's optional, something that's mandated, and if either of those happen, what are the goals that the state legislature would see as the opportunity to help recover from lost learning? And then the last one that, of literally 60 to 100 bills is full-time nurses. Farmington is well positioned in this because most of our schools do. A few of our elementaries share nurses, but all schools have a health clerk, and all schools have at least a half-time full-time nurse. And so we're watching with that, especially when the legislature gets around to making rules. Do they fund them? The legislature is famous for unfunded mandates. Schools do this, but we're not going to give you any money to do it. So we're interested in, if any of these bills happen, will the adequate funding come? But the good news is we're halfway done. It looks like it's going to be new money, maybe as much as 4%. And so we still have a chance to give voice. If you have interests, call our local legislators and share your opinions.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Schmidt. And you mentioned some new money. And I guess then the other question is about the budget, dealing with perhaps not so much new money, depending on how the formula is devised to decide how much money schools will get, depending on enrollment. Enrollment is always a big factor in school funding, of course. And there are two, I think, competing versions, I guess, of how to come up with your annual funding formula, correct?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And I think our listeners would be very curious about what's going on at the state legislature from the standpoint of competing visions by the Legislative Finance Committee and the Legislative Education Study Committee, LFC and LESC. So when the legislature is in their conversation, we look to what happened to enrollment during this past school year. And for Farmington, we have an enrollment decline of 550 students during this past year. And that has a dramatic budget impact of $4.1 million. And that's a lot of staff or program to consider when you think about 4.1 million. So Farmington as a municipal school is very interested in which of these ends up. In the Farmington or the LFC version, it would set that 10,545 kids as our funding formula. And if perchance students come back, we would get some kind of catch-up money in January of 22. But, that doesn't help us in the immediacy of budget, trying to understand staffing and program if we have to account for 4.1 million fewer dollars. So the LESC, Scott, is our preference, and it has a clause that they call hold harmless, that for at least 1 year, they would take a look at our enrollment of 10,500. They would know that we had expected and at one time had 11,000 kids. They would backfill the difference between that 10.5 and that 11, giving us that 4.1 to backfill. So go back very quickly to the LFC, not to get too wonky in all of this, but the LFC, their plan is, well, you can, if you want to maintain staffing and program, dip into your cash reserve. And Farmington does have about a $7 to $8 million cash reserve, but would we want to invest $4 million of that to maintain program or staffing? So that's a question we'll be asking as our budget committee meets. The other curiosity is we're going to get an infusion of new federal dollars. The CARISA, or the Second CARES Act, as we call it, CARISA, that's going to contribute $8.9 million in direct apportionment from the federal government. And that is in addition to the CARES Act that we already have received that was 2.2. This money, Scott, is intended to help finance the unexpected cost of all of the COVID expenses. You may remember when one of our earlier shows we talked about how a new mandate is all the schools had to convert to a MERV 13 filter for our HVAC systems. We had to look at new sanitizing stations. In many cases, we put up plexiglass to as protective barriers between staff and students and lunch counters and things. We've added additional mental staff, mental health services. And so, we have spent, of that original 2.2 million, we spent 1.2 already just on helping us accommodate the adjustments we had to make for not only at-home learning, but in-person learning. For example, we have almost 680 what I'll call hotspots, people who have poor connectivity, know that you can get a little plug-in device to your, almost like an air card. And so we have distributed 680 hotspots to students and families that didn't have internet. So there's just a lot of expenses that we incurred to not only protect students and staff for their return, but to sanitize buildings. And in this 8.9, I'd like to continue using those funds, for technology as opposed to backfilling the cost of staffing. So there's a lot of wonkiness in this, and we'll be, sharing information with the public as we go into our budget for the 22 school year. But do know that there's going to be some new money, and if we have our way with the legislature, we can still convince them that hold harmless is a better way of maintaining stability. As an example, the studies that Stan Rounds and others from the New Mexico Center for Education Excellence, predict that one versus the other is the possibility of 1,200 staff members across the state in perhaps budget cuts. Again, Farmington, we are of a mind that we will maintain our staffing in whatever fashion we can. And so I don't want to, cause panic amongst our staff, because, my commitment to us is that we're going to maintain staffing and full programs.
Understood. Well, and Dr. Schmidt, I guess, is there a possibility that maybe the final piece of that legislation might be a combination of those two proposals from both the LFC and the LEFC?
And I would say that if that happens, it would happen because of the promotion of either our Senate, because the House has sent the bill to the Senate already, or the governor line item and maybe redirection. So right now our hope is with the Senate that they would backfill that through their own version of, Senate Bill 2 becomes House Bill 2. So that is our hope at this time. So we're working with Senator Scheer and Senator Neville, who are great people, by the way, in trying to help us on this issue.
Very good. Well, good to hear. And I guess in the minutes, or just a few minutes remaining this morning with you, Dr. Schmidt, and that is kind of looking ahead at graduation. And of course, we all dealt with very different types of graduation last year. I guess the hopes are maybe to have something more similar to a traditional graduation, but I know conversations are still ongoing, right?
Yes, and I would say a number of things. If we believe, we being Farmington and my staff, we believe that if we can get the county to some status of yellow and hopefully green, that would allow us to go back to in-person graduations and kind of celebrate. Scott, I just always enjoy you being the announcer, and so I found this old picture of you in the moment announcing for Piedra Vista, and so I just wanted to kind of share that memory back with you and how much we appreciate your personal connection to our graduations. But
well, thank
right
you.
Now,
I always appreciate being invited to do that, Dr. Schmidt, and it doesn't make me feel old at all that I've been the only announcer that Piedra Vista High School has ever had since it was built. Go ahead.
It is one of my favorite moments to see you out there bringing the kids up to their diploma moment. But for our community, I would want you to know that I'm one of 8 superintendents from around the state that have been invited to participate in the New Mexico Education Public Education Department Task Force. And so Farmington not only has a personal voice for our community, but I am also the representative of all the school districts in the Four Corners area: Gallup, Dulce, Aztec, Central Consolidated, Bloomfield. And so, we get a first, place at the table in this conversation. So we can talk about red, yellow, and green, and everybody by now knows what that means.
Right.
But last year we were virtual, but a number of schools after their virtual had to drive through the school parking lots and pick up your diplomas. We've actually already had drive through the parking lot and take your pictures, and now kids, as you know, are actually back in school. But the progression that I will try and share with the state is, let's look at the colors and, at the very least, allow kids to have some kind of presence on campus. Maybe now that we're back in school, we can even do a walk through the hall graduation, pick up diplomas or something. But in terms of large, when you got 300 or more kids and there's still this more than 10 can't gather in one spot for, what would be considered a non-essential event, might be a drive-through theater. Certainly our hope is I want the kids back in the stadiums. And that will be my petition to the public education department is we have moved far enough into this, for goodness sake, Scott, we're playing football. Let's put the kids out on the football field for a graduation. And if things are really green, then let's get back to a normal world where you have the choice of outdoor or indoor. So again, Dr. Pendergrass, if you're out there somewhere, nothing would please me more than to put that second annual San Juan College high school graduation back on campus. And so we will be presenting, our choices along with the recommendations from the other superintendents who are scattered from all across the state in how we might do that. So my comment, Scott, to perhaps the public, and with the knowledge that I'm meeting with all of our high school principals this week to talk more about their preferences before we meet with the state committee. If you have an opinion as a parent, I'm open to hearing it. Send me an email.
Very good, Dr. Schmidt. And I would think that maybe it also could be of getting maybe the kids and your teachers in the stadium to go through the graduation ceremony, but maybe not being able to fill the stands with the families, but maybe do some kind of a streaming video production like we maybe saw last year to maybe fill that gap as well and allow out-of-town relatives to take part in the graduation like we were able to do this past year. I don't know. Maybe another option.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment because that's something I'll take with me is that, might in some kind of spirit of compromise, put the kids all out on the field in that social distance and then figure out a way to limit, parents and friends, or if things are green, let's fill the stadium. But at the very least, I agree with you. Let's get the families who are connected to the kids, the teachers who've been so important in those kids' lives for that in-person graduation if we can.
Very good. Well, Dr. Schmidt, here at KSJE, we're happy to help in any way that we can. So do keep us in mind if that fits into the plans that as they develop. But thank you very much. We are out of time yet again this month, but I appreciate you coming on the program as always.
Yeah, we'll see you next month with more definitive on what our sports teams are doing and what we're doing for graduation.
All right. Very good. Dr. Schmidt, thank you so much. Have a great day. That is Farmington Municipal School Superintendent Dr. Eugene Schmidt, my guest this morning here on KSJE. And I'll be back with more in just a moment, everybody. The time right now is 8:41.
Could a